Miss Jones, how do you feel about Shakespeare?
I adore Shakespeare. In fact, when I was in college, I studied abroad in London for a summer, and the entire time we studied the works of Shakespeare. We would read the play and then go see the play in the theater. Got to see the Globe, got to go to some outdoor theaters in the parks of London. So I've definitely had a love for him since I played Juliet in my Romeo and Juliet presentation in high school, and still really enjoy reading and teaching him today.
Okay. How do you think greed is portrayed throughout Macbeth?
Well, it has been a while since I've read Macbeth, but greed is portrayed as a, powerful force, albeit a dangerous force in Macbeth. Once, if I recall, he hears a witch's prophecies, he seeks the throne voraciously, and unfortunately for him, it results in his deterioration and ultimately his death, as well as the death of many others along the way, if I recall. So there's definitely a link between greed and danger, I would say, in Macbeth.
So how do you feel about greed?
Let's see. Well, greed to me definitely has a negative connotation. I feel like today in our world we have a lot of envy and coveting of things that other people have, and it's driven by greed. If we look at greed as ambition, I would say that can be a powerful source of motivation, but ultimately greed has kind of a negative sentiment to me, and I try as much as I can to not feel envious of others and appreciate what I have.
If you could do anything in the world and not get caught, what would you do?
If I'm totally honest, I think I would get myself a puppy, and my landlord and my fiance would never find out.
All right. Thank you. Yeah, I'm ready. According to Rebecca Crouch, greed can control your actions and your mind. How do you feel about this?
I agree with Rebecca. I think oftentimes people get consumed with greed because they think they can gain more or get more, whether it's power or money, and then that becomes the focus of their attention instead of what is morally and ethically correct.
How would you How would you differentiate King Duncan and Macbeth?
I think that King Duncan was a good king. I think his intentions were good. Unfortunately, he did not read people well, and he probably didn't have any reason not to trust Macbeth. Did you say Macbeth?
Yeah.
Okay. And so we never know whether whether Macbeth could have been a good leader, but I'm assuming he was, just because Duncan had put him in a position of leadership prior and then trusted him after murdering the king of Cawdor. But he was consumed by greed, and so that goes back to what Rebecca says about greed and your focus changing to power and becoming too hungry.
According to some websites, they say his wife put ideas in his head that changed him. Would you agree that his wife drove him to become power hungry?
I do, because initially he second-guessed himself, which shows his moral and ethic foundation, I think, initially, but because she challenged him by saying that he was basically wimpy and that this would be for the better, and he deserved to be the leader, and he was a coward if he didn't, then that challenged Macbeth the first time, and then once he got a taste of the power, then he wanted more. So yes, I think Lady Macbeth definitely challenged his morals and ethics initially.
What role do you think the witches played with greed throughout the play?
I think the witches represent temptation, and as greed is tempting, the witches were tempting to Macbeth.
If you could do anything in the world and not get caught, what would you do?
Oh my goodness. I would never hurt anybody. That would never be part of my plan. If I could do anything and not get caught, I would sneak into like a big sporting event that's really hard to get tickets for.
Okay.
Like the Final Four, or a concert that's sold out. That would probably be about the extent of it, if I knew I was going to get caught. But I'd never hurt anybody like Macbeth did.
Thank you. All right. How do you feel about Shakespeare?
Oh, anytime I have an opportunity to work with Shakespeare, and kids working with Shakespeare. I think it's a great opportunity to work with some of these universal ideas that connect to people in any time, in any place. And I think the power of Shakespeare's language, because it does involve more thought behind it, helps us to reflect even more on it, and so it becomes more powerful.
Okay, how do you feel about greed?
I'm all for it. Give me more. No. Sorry. But I think, greed is one of those tendencies that I think is really easy to experience because we live in a society that it makes us always looking at what other people have and things that we want. We live in kind of a consumerist society where we have marketers telling us all of these things that we don't have or these things that we would want to make our lives better. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's so easy for us to begin to shape our mind that way. Instead of looking at all of the wonderful things that we have, we look at the one thing we want to improve. And I think that even us as educators or in the school system, we typically have a tendency to focus on that. We mark things wrong instead of marking all of the things right. And so I think that it's just kind of a mindset that we have as people that we always have to fight against, of being grateful and looking at what we do have.
According to Rebecca Crouch, greed can control your actions and your mind. How do you feel about that?
Well, like I said, I think greed is kind of this mindset, and so I think it is easy for us to kind of operate from that area of lack, especially because our brains kind of want to fix it. We have brains that want to fix things and make improvements, and so when we begin to just focus on all those things that need fixing or all those things that we want, it can kind of take over, and I think that it's maybe part of our human survival, to do the things that we would need to do to just help us survive in that way. So I think it seems to be kind of tied into something that's very universal and affects a lot of people. Certainly, are we going to take some of the steps that, people do in MacBeth? No. But I think that that's that universal piece that, even at Christmas time or holiday time, oh, shoot, I wanted this thing that this other person got, that they're opening up next to me. Or, we see just, a piece of clothing that someone else wants. That it's just all of those little things reinforce that idea.
Mm-hmm. If you could do anything in the world and not get caught, what would you do?
Let's see. Oh, that's a hard question. I don't know. I feel like I've never really been a sneaky person because I think in my brain I always think I'm going to be the one who does get caught. Give all my students A's. We'll go with that one.
All right. Thank you.
How do you feel about the picture?
I think this picture shows it's like the emotion is triumph. I think he's laid these plans and he's accomplished the plans and it's like the victory sign. It's triumphant.
All right. According to Bruce Levine, he said money is like the central of basically all thoughts. Like, do you agree with him? And how does it connect with greed?
I hope I disagree. I don't think I think about money that much, that it's like the central part of all my thoughts, but I suppose history might disagree. Like, I think a lot of conflict is centered around money or wealth in some form. And then what was the second part? How does it connect to greed?
Yes.
Obviously, there's a tendency to where in history where people, even though they have a lot of money, they want more. So it's almost like money is addicting. So maybe that's the question or the connection, that it's people get addicted to money and that leads to greedy behavior.
All right. John Bow explains that critics tend to focus more on the characters than the lesson of the story. Would you agree? And what do you think the lesson of the story is?
I would agree, because when I hear about Macbeth, I don't think of the storyline. I think of Lady Macbeth, and I think of the witches, and I don't think of the story arc. And I think it's telling that you asked what do I think of the story.
Yeah, like what do you think the lesson's on?
I pride comes before the fall. Like I don't know the story well enough to even say confidently what the lesson of the story is because I don't know it as well. I just know about the characters. So I think that's a fair criticism.
All right. If you could do anything in the world and not get caught, what would you do?
That is a really hard question. I don't know. It's like burying my soul. I suppose because I'm not a violent person at all. I think it would probably be something like getting money. Like I wouldn't hurt someone or get revenge on someone. I'd try to get money.
So like rob a bank, basically.
I guess. Although I've heard that the average bank robber gets away with like $4,000, and that doesn't seem like. I guess if you're not going to get caught, who cares? But it.
For $1,000 in your pocket.
Yeah, I suppose that's better than nothing, right? But I don't know. That would be, I guess, maybe what.